Now we're going to look at literacy and reasoning. And I sent, when we go over all of these things, I just want you to know I sent this list, literacy concepts and terms, to all managers, and they have this great list, and that list is going to help you be familiar with what literacy terms are and how you can make it appropriate for your age group. Okay. So the reason we're hitting on that concept development, language development, the reason we're doing this is because it is part of literacy. Okay. We are not checking for concept development with class until November, and it is a hard one. We will probably spend 6 months on instructional support, which is concept development, quality of feedback, advanced language modeling, and literacy focus. Those things are really hard, man. And that's the goal, is for us to be doing that in all of our classrooms that are ages 3 to 5. The only reason we're hitting on it now is this is a literacy training. So analysis and reasoning is just teachers using those discussions to encourage children to think, not to solve a problem, but to think about how to solve that problem. Are you giving them opportunities to create and produce? If they want to know what happens when you mix 2 colors together, are you letting them? This is a big one too, and it's a rare one. It's one of those that you really got to know about, or you're not going to do it. Are you building on children's previous knowledge? And are you connecting related ideas? That just gives it meaning. And if you can say, remember last week when we talked about the letter M, my goodness, Mom starts with M and it's Mother's Day. That kind of connection. That's the integration part of it. And again, connections to the real world. That's when they really start to learn. All right. The first part of that is that analysis and reasoning. That is when you're asking why or how questions. For a younger classroom, 2s, early 3s, that's going to look more like what, when, right? So you do kind of have to adjust that to the age. But the whys in the house for 4 and 5-year-olds, they totally get it, or they should be able to. And they will if we do it. Who knows, man? Maybe no one's ever asked those kids why or how. Problem solving, that's just that, hey, teacher, open this. Well, what could we try to do to get it open? You know, and that's just you getting them to the point to where they go, yeah, it's slipping because my hand is wet. Well, what could we do to get your hand to not be wet? I'm going to go get a paper towel. And then they try to open it, and they open it on their own. And you don't get the glory, they do. And they get confidence booster off of that. And you know what confidence does for kids. What will happen if, and then, you know, comparing and classifying. We're going to go over this in depth later. Teacher leading child to answers rather than giving them the answers. Creation. This is one of my favorite parts. And when you see it in action, and again, guys, you guys got to practice this. It is not easy. It took me a good 3 years to get where this stuff came natural in a classroom for me. But if a kid comes up and says, we don't have purple paint, rather than saying, well, we'll make some. Do we have red and blue? You get them to come up with that. How could we make some? What could we mix? And it would turn purple. Planning, producing. And number 3 is the integration part of it. And that's just like that sign is an octagon, like the one we did in class. It's just where you're connecting things for them. You'll see a lot of repetition in here. We talk about this a lot, just the connections to the real world and to their lives. Quality of feedback. kind of the same thing, but this idea of scaffolding, this is another thing you really got to practice. This is where some of you guys might remember this. There is a zone for children, and it's you got what a kid knows. Think about a line. In the middle of the line is the knowledge that is in their brain right then and there. All right. When the way you start teaching is when you go right beyond where they are right now. If you go backwards, they're not going to learn. So you scaffold with the child until you figure out, okay, they know about numbers 1 through 5. So now I'm going to introduce 6 cars and then 7 cars. And then you introduce 8 cars and they don't get it anymore. So then you might have to take one step back. So that's what scaffolding is. And that's something we'll really dive into in November. Feedback loops, y'all know what that is, back and forth conversation, prompting those brain cells to get going, asking them to explain why they did something. You always are feeding them information, you know, walk outside and see a leaf falling and say, wonder why that leaf just fell out of that tree. You know, it's stuff, you know. You're just putting on a little show for them, and then you'll get answers. You're getting their brains going. So you don't give the answer. You let that child find the answer. I kind of want to show you the videos on these, but I'm going to wait until November. Turn taking conversations. Don't ever give up. Keep taking them down a level until they fully understand it. That's the scaffolding. Make sure you ask tons of questions. They love to answer questions. So you think it's cold outside? What are the reasons that you think it's cold outside? And then you just keep going with that down a level, down a level, down a level until they say, well, I think it's cold outside because there's frost on the trees. So providing information, that's just like, okay, so that's sinking, wonder what is making it sink. And the answer that you're trying to get them to say is, well, it's heavy. But a lot of times they won't connect that. So what you would do to take it down a level is get that thing out of the water and have them hold a rubber ducky that's floating and have them hold that heavy rock and say, what are the difference between those two? And eventually you can get them to where they say, the rock is heavy or the rock is big. And they solved it themselves. Always recognize efforts. If efforts are always low, it's a teacher problem. And the child's lesson plan should be altered at that point. And that's another concept. I really want to do a training sometime this year, maybe January, on this book that I studied in one of my early childhood classes. And it's called The Parent Toolbox. And it's looking at, is this a parent/teacher problem, or is this a child problem? And man, it is so crazy how, if you really think about whose problem it is, lots of time it's not the kid, it's the teacher and her expectations. That'll be a fun training. All right, language modeling. This is really getting into literacy. We have language modeling, and then we're going to go over some literacy stuff. We're looking at about, for those of you who are getting impatient, we're looking at probably about 20 more minutes. So language modeling is another part of class, something we'll go over in November. It's my favorite one. This is fun because you get to introduce these cool words and you learn from it. Your vocabulary improves. frequent conversation. It looks, I'm going to be looking, are there open-ended questions that you're asking? Are you repeating? Because remember, repetition, 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 that's how kids learn. Self and parallel talk, which is like, well, we'll get into that in a minute. And then my favorite, advanced language. That's when you're using new words randomly. Are the kids talking? A lot of the times that's a hint of what the overall classroom is really like, is watching the kids interact. Questions that require more than a one-word response is something that I would be looking for. We were going to do a little practice, but we won't do that. Just think about it on your own, because it's kind of hard. You know, that's something you got to practice too. Think about questions you can ask them that are not a yes or no, 1, 2, red, blue answer. It takes some time to think about. Definitely skills right here.
So an example of this would be, say a child says, "It's orange." Then you in response would say, "It is orange." And there you're repeating, and then you're extending by saying this: "Did you know if we do not have the color orange, we can mix two colors together and create orange? What two colors could we mix?" Now that would stop the extension, and then you can even hit your concept development here. And what you're going to learn soon, guys, is this seems complicated, but this is an example where you are meeting almost every indicator that requires language in one short paragraph. What two colors could we mix? Let's experiment and try to create orange. So then you get, 4 or 5 paints out or markers, whatever you want to mix, and you experiment. You're there, you're hitting productivity for different modalities, preparation, which shouldn't be a big deal because you guys already have paint in your art centers because it's always accessible. So it's so much less complicated than this is making it. There's so many slides, but the truth is once you get the hang of it, within 3 sentences, you can almost accomplish everything on here.
Yep. That's probably one of the most important statements of all, because it's true. Self and parallel talk. What that is that you're just giving them language a lot. You're saying, okay, so I am going to pull down the projector. We don't have projectors, but just as an example. And you guys are going to do the dance that I'm going to pull up. You're just throughout the day, you're saying that. If it's babies, this was required in the scales even. And you'll see a lot of those things, that were required in Itters and Eckers repeated in this, because Itters and Eckers had some good stuff, but this is, I'm changing your diaper even to a little one, of 6 months, because they're hearing your language and you're smiling and you got a warm voice. So self and parallel is an important part of just having a good quality classroom. And then the lovely advanced language. When I'm in y'all's rooms, just talking to the kids, I've trained my brain to do that constantly. And I've been doing it with Ella, because unfortunately Kennedy and Britton, I didn't know anything when I had them. So they just kind of have been on their own, but I've really hit that advanced language with Ella. Man, she's got some big words, and you just train yourself and you can help your kids at home. When I learned about class and I started training in class to become a trainer, advanced language, I grew. I learned so many big words. I actually had a list of about 6 pages of words that I would look at, at the end of the week when I was planning my lesson plan. And I can take those words and use them in the classroom, and you just get used to it. And before you know it, you're using these wonderful words, and then the kids start using them, and parents are like, what in the world are you doing, my kid? They're like reasoning and using big words like collaborate, and it happens. I've seen it in action. It's really cool. All right, let's look at literacy. What is the definition of literacy? So when I was education coordinator at Head Start, and we had about 12 classrooms, and literacy hit hard. And they were like, you got to get on this. The state of Tennessee is crazy about it. I was like, oh my God, what is literacy? Like, I didn't know. Well, all it is just, can you read and can you write? That's it. So fancy, but that's all it is. It's the ability to read and write. And the way it seems, I don't know, it might not be scary for y'all, but for some reason, that was a scary thing to me, that I was responsible for teaching these children literacy. But when you dig into it, it's a lot simpler, just like everything, than it seems. I do want to tell you Britton's story. And he's never been a reader. I've tried, I've cried, I've begged. Well, he is 6th grade, he just finished 6th grade. And they wanted him to come to summer camp. So I called Miss Rose and I said, hey, what's up? Did he fail? And because he'd never made anything less than a C and very few C's. And she said, no. She said, the reason I put him in there, he don't have to come, but this is what's happened to your son. And this is how good Miss Rose was. And I'm sad. No, I'm not sad because she's doing bigger things now, but she said, when your son was in preschool, pre-K, and kindergarten, they did not teach him phonics. They taught him rote memorization of letters and words. He never understood the theory part of it, right? Blending words. So now in 6th grade, and she made sure to tell me, and Jennifer, some of those teachers are still doing this. And then they get up to 6th grade and you have a Britton. He spends so much time, love his heart, trying to blend letters that he misses the meaning of the story. And anyway, she was really cool. And she gave me tons of information that I have, and I will send out to y'all, from the state of Tennessee. Oh man, I found out lots of cool stuff. But we can get every child here. We'll be getting free books soon because she told me about a resource, and I'm making up a flyer. I'm gonna hand it out to y'all, and these parents can get free books, just like Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, but this is geared towards pre-K kindergarten kids only. So I'm excited to do that, and I will do it. So that's Britton's little story. Pretty sad for us. He still hates reading. He's got a super negative association with reading. He went to pre-K at Dillis, and they were wonderful, and they loved him so much. And then he had Miss Ross in kindergarten. I shouldn't be mentioning names, but he just never learned how to blend letters. So what our literacy focus tells us, and this is also going to align directly with the 10Ls, okay? So everything we're doing here is going to be, the state's going to be happy with. Are you using literacy related terms? That's why I sent that sheet out. It sounds complicated, but it's, some of those words are huge, irony and things like that. And you can say, wow, isn't that ironic? And let the kids hear that word. But there's also stuff like story, rhyming, plot, conflict, those kinds of words. They want to see you using those kinds of words to get at least them familiar with those kinds of things. Are you doing literacy activities? I know we are here. Do you draw attention to literacy concepts. And that's something I had not been doing. And after doing this training today, we were in the doctor's office with Ella, and I said, oh, look at that sign up there, and pointed to the exit sign. And we talked about the letters, because they say that's one of the most important things you can do, is just in normal everyday life, point out words. Oh, that is a sign. And that those letters say exit. Exit means we can walk out this way. That's a real world kind of application, you know? So take, you know, get that sheet, man. I searched for it for you guys because I couldn't tell you lots of literacy. Be on the lookout for print. Call children's attention to it. This is the kind of literacy activities they're talking about. Use print in only meaningful ways, not everyone sit down and write this, but point out signs on doors like we talked about. Help them if they're complaining, oh my gosh, those boys are being loud at the science center and I'm trying to rest in dramatic play, or sorry, in cozy. Help them write a sign that says, be quiet, things like that. Get them excited about letters and words. Don't force rote literacy activities, because as we talked about, that can cause a negative association with letters and harm them down the road. Play games. Games are part of free play. That counts as free play now. Rhyming words, they can get that, you know. Do the banana song. Do Willoughby Wallaby Woo. I always thought that was such a silly song, but it's a huge piece of literacy. Wait, do you guys, I'm going to say those again if you need to write them down. The banana song, you guys, I'm sure know these, and Willoughby Wallaby Woo. Hey, I got people in here. Hi. Oh man, I've had my Willoughby Wallaby Woo, an elephant sat on you. You know it. All right, guys, look up Willoughby Wallaby Woo, because then you go Willoughby Wallaby Woo, an elephant sat on Bambi, and you go through all the different vowels and sounds, and they love it. They love it. And it's, you know, just again, the simple literacy activities. You're opening a box of crayons and you say, listen to the sound at the beginning of this word, crayon. Can you tell me what sound is at the beginning? Not what letter, what sound. And that's helping them with phonics rather than, oh, this is a C and they don't really get it. Ask them to tell you the sound rather than the letter and then connect it.